It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and if you're wondering why there was no show yesterday, it was Christmas, of course. And as Jacob Marley once said, I was making rather merry yesterday. So, yeah, that's why there was no episode today. But there is today, as today we are taking a look at Easter weekend 2007, another holiday. Which is April 6th, and we've got 5 films to look at today. A lot of family films, a lot of films that should not be released on the Easter weekend, but they did, and most of them are not very good. There's a couple of exceptions here and there, but we'll get to those as we go along here. But let's begin by taking a look at the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is the sequel that everyone was asking for. Are we done yet? Funny, that's what everyone was saying when they were watching this movie. Are we done yet? Can we wrap this up already? And no, we can't, unfortunately. But as you see in the trailer, in this movie, you have Ice Cube and Neil Long once again playing the newlyweds Nick and Suzanne Parsons, and they decide to move to the suburbs to provide a better life for their 2 kids, Lindsay and Kevin, but their idea of a dream home is disturbed by a contractor, played by John C. McGinley, with a bizarre approach to business. I said before, with Wild Hogs, they were really trying to push John C. McGinley as the next big movie star. Of course, he'd been a character actor for so many years, but his work as Dr. Cox on Scrubs, basically led Hollywood to think he was going to be the next big deal, but never really went that route. But this was actually based off of a remake. This was actually originally supposed to be a remake of Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, and they basically turned that into a sequel that, yeah, it's about what you expect it to be, a generic comedy sequel that's not funny, not clever, and just, lazy callbacks to the first movie. Like, we gotta have the deer in there because the deer was in the first movie. We gotta have we gotta have lines that we used in the first film. We gotta use them now for the mother in this movie who's now pregnant. Like, stuff like that. It is what you think it is once you get into it. And there was a much funnier version of the storyline done better. This is not Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House. It's a movie called The Money Pit, which was another movie about a couple that buys a house, a really nice looking house, for very cheap, only to realize that the house is completely and utterly trashed. Like, it literally, the walls are crumbling down, the floors are breaking open, the stairs literally fall apart, the electricity almost takes out the entire kitchen. Just chaos happens. It's a much funnier movie than anything in this pile of garbage, and this is without a doubt the worst thing Ice Cube has ever done in terms of movies, and that's not really saying a whole lot because. But then again, no, I take that back. Ice Cube, I like Ice Cube a lot, but a lot of his movies he does have not been the best movies overall, and it's not really his fault. It's just that the scripts he's given are not really that clever or funny to work with, or entertaining to work with as a whole. Not really funny, but look at Triple X State of the Union a few years ago. Like, he probably could have been a replacement for Vin Diesel, but unfortunately the script wasn't very good. And yeah, here the script isn't very good, and it just falls into predictable territory that we've seen done to death so many times before. And and this was only made because the first movie was such a success, and then this comes out, doesn't make any bit of the money that the first movie did, because the first movie was released over Martin Luther King Jr. weekend when no family competition was out there. You're releasing this right in the middle of stuff like TMNT, Meet the Robinsons, Blades of Glory. Some families went to go see Blades of Glory instead of this. I mean, just common sense would tell you, if you're releasing this with a bunch of other competition, chances are it's not going to do very well. And not a shocker, this movie didn't do very well, and it doesn't help that the movie isn't funny either. Jokes that you've seen done to death before so many times, humor that's not funny whatsoever. It's just the typical bad family comedy sequel that just exists to make a quick buck because the first movie was such a success, and you could tell nobody put real effort into this movie. Nobody really wanted to do this movie, except they did it because the first movie was a success, and they got a bigger paycheck out of it. And there was also a TV series that came out of the original Are We There Yet too, so I guess this is considered a franchise, but yeah, I don't know, man. The first movie wasn't even that great to begin with, and this one definitely takes the cake on how not to make me want to come back to these movies, or anyone to want to come back to these movies anytime soon. So that is Are We Done Yet? So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is arguably the best movie of the entire weekend, and it's actually 2 movies: Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino's Grindhouse. Because when I think of a movie to put out on Easter weekend, I want to put out an homage to exploitation films in the 1970s. That's the way to go. But yeah, we'll talk about why this movie didn't do so well in just a little bit here. But this is Grindhouse. This is two feature films put together, one by Quentin Tarantino, one by Robert Rodriguez. And you have two movies here. First off, you have Planet Terror, which is a horror comedy written and directed by Robert Rodriguez about a group of survivors who battle zombie-like creatures. And Rose McGowan, I almost forgot her name. Rose McGowan plays a woman who has a gun for where her leg was because, of course, she got bitten by her leg got taken away from zombies. And then there's Death Proof, which is a slasher film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino about Kurt Russell, who's a murderous stuntman who kills young women with modified vehicles. And the cast that includes not only McGowan and Russell, but Freddie Rodriguez, Michael Biehn, Jeff Fahey, Josh Brolin, Marley Shelton, Rosario Dawson, Vanessa Felito, Jordan Ladd, Sidney Tamia Portier, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Zoe Bell. A lot of good names all attached throughout the movie. And there's also trailers directed by people like Rob Zombie, Edgar Wright, Eli Roth, and Jason Eisner. Some of those have actually gone on to become films of their own. The Machete movies, for example, and Hobo with a Shotgun, and most recently, Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. The movie, it's a fun experience overall, but there's a lot of things you could tell that was probably not going to work to the film's advantage in terms of the box office. Like I said before, releasing on an Easter weekend. I know Sin City came out around the same time on Easter of 2005, but there's a major difference between Sin City and Grindhouse coming out on Easter weekend. Sin City, I think, it was mostly because it was one movie, and it just had more of an appeal visually that made people want to go see it. With this is a very selective group of people that's going to go see this movie, and you can promote it as much as you want to, but there's only going to be a specific group of people that's going to go see a movie like this on Easter weekend. Wouldn't have done better if it was released in the months of August or September or maybe even January? Probably. I think probably that should have been the way they should have gone with it overall. But 2 is the runtime, because you got 2 movies as well as a series of trailers. This thing runs at over 3 hours long, and yeah. Most people, unless you have an audience that really wants to see a massive extended movie. People will sit for 3 hours to watch stuff like the Lord of the Rings movies, the Harry Potter films. Oppenheimer was over 3 hours long last year, and and everyone went to go see it. But in the case of this, like you have these 2 films in general, and it just. You're sitting there for all that time. You don't really get like an intermission overall because you want to sit there and watch the trailers by these directors that also have cameos throughout the course of those as well. Like Nicolas Cage is in one for what was the trailer? I think it was Werewolf Women of the SS. I think it was the Rob Zombie trailer in this, but yeah, it's just like. It also didn't really help that the marketing was also very specific on who was going to go see this. Like, you needed to be... It's like, if they were really going to push this, they should have pushed it everywhere. It shouldn't have just been, like, stuff to be promoted exclusively on, like, Adult Swim or MTV or these specific areas in general. Like, this movie really was going to have a hard time finding an audience in general, but... The good news is it did eventually find its audience. It did find its audience mostly through home media and through streaming and all that stuff. Like, it has gone on to have that cult following to it, which it rightfully deserves. It deserves to have that cult following overall. And I'll say this. If I'm going to choose which one's the better... the movies could have also been equally as good, because... I like Planet Terror. I like the idea of it. I like Rose McGowan actually has a nice role, has a really good role in here as this go-go dancer that gets involved in here, and of course she loses her leg and uses the machine gun and she uses the machine gun as a leg. Like, that's a cool, fun idea. Unfortunately, the rest of the film is kind of bland for the most part. Like, there's not really a whole lot of exciting things about it in general, but the real highlight of the movie is Death Proof, which is a really good really good movie, which is a really good, intense movie in general, because you're seeing Kurt Russell being this suave, sophisticated guy at first, and then when his intentions get out there, and just like, he is very menacing in this movie, the multiple times that he does this in this movie. And I like the fact that the main focus of the movie is this incredible chase scene featuring these leading actresses involved in it, played by Zoe Bell, Rosario Dawson, and Tracy Thoms. They really do work as these women that at first they're trying to get away from Kurt Russell, and then one situation happens when Kurt Russell gloats too much, and then they get a shot off, and then it's just like the tables turn, and it just leads to one of the most satisfying sequences of anything I've ever seen in a movie like this. I mean, this is a good movie. This is a really good movie that has a lot of things that work. Great comedy, great drama, great tension, great action, great car chases, just great music in general. It's a really good movie, and it really is the best of the two movies, hands down. And yeah, I think if the Planet Terror had a little more juice to it, actually had a lot more things about it that would have made it much more special, this would have been something that was a must-see all the way across the board. But as it is, it's a really good movie. It's a really good combination of two films. One's definitely a lot better than the others, and yeah, it's a film that I think was going to have a real hard time making its money back at the box office anyway, but it has found its audience over the years. It has eventually made its money back in multiple ways than one, and yeah, it's a fun time overall. I was really fortunate to see it in theaters, and I had a good time with it. I could see why a lot of people would be very much mixed about it overall, but yeah. Good fun time overall, Grindhouse. Speaking of movies that probably should not have been released around Easter weekend, let's talk about our next movie, which is very similar. Hilary Swank in The Reaping. Well, the reason she's not going to kill your daughter is because we wouldn't have a movie then. She probably should have killed your daughter, but I digress. This is The Reaping, and I think you can kind of see some of the problems with this movie going into it, but the death of a child in mysterious circumstances sparks a series of events that seem to represent biblical plagues, which start occurring in, of all places, a town called Haven, that is located deep in the bowels of the Bible Belt County in the country in the bayous of Louisiana. Good Lord. A former Christian missionary turned religious I cannot speak today. A former Christian missionary turned religious phenomena debunker, not played by Hilary Swank, and her top open-minded student. That's the one who's played by Hilary Swank. I'm having trouble reading this. This is okay. Let me start again. Let me just start all over again. The death of a child in mysterious circumstances sparks a series of events that seem to represent biblical plagues, which start occurring in, of all places, the town called Haven, that is located deep in the bowels of the Bible Belt country in the bayous of Louisiana. A former Christian missionary turned religious phenomena debunker and her top open-minded student turned personal assistant are sent to investigate. And the student is played by Hilary Swank, and the person who she's helping is played by David Morrissey. You also have Idris Elba, Anna Sophia Robb, Stephen Ray involved in the movie. It's been way too long since I've seen this movie, so I don't even remember. That's why I don't remember who was what in this movie, because I've seen this movie so long ago. But written by the same guys that would later create The Conjuring, so they have written some good stuff. But then these guys also have done The House of Wax, which was not a good movie, and this is definitely a movie that is even worse than House of Wax was. House of Wax at least had some fun ideas overall. This is a bad movie. This is a film that is just... It reminds me so much of a movie like The Seventh Sign with Demi Moore, which I think is a much better movie in general, but it's just lifeless, and there's just nothing really happens in this movie that's exciting, thrilling, or terrifying whatsoever. I mean, not even like all the explosions and all that stuff. Like everything that happens just happens because we don't know why it happens. It just happens. Just go along with it. And no, I don't want to go along with it. Nobody should have to go along with this movie in general. And just Hilary Swank in another misfire in 2007. Because she had Freedom Riders, and then this movie, and then the year's just going to keep going on because she's going to be starting some more garbage at this as the year goes on. But this is not a very good movie, so yeah, not much more to say about this one. The Reaping sucks. So With all that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is another family film that came out this weekend, Firehouse Dog. See, Fox made a live-action remake of Bolt before you can get to it, Disney. Even though this movie came out more than a year before Bolt came out, they beat you to it. And I'm sorry, Bolt's the better movie here. But Rex, with 3 X's, so I guess he's a porn star dog, I guess. Hollywood's top canine star is best known for his extreme athletic abilities and diva-like demeanor. He's a dog. How does he have a diva-like demeanor? But I digress. He gets lost and is reluctantly adopted into a shabby firehouse. He teams up with a young kid played by Josh Hutcherson, who is ditching science class to get the station back on its feet. So, this could really have gone one of 2 ways. It could have been a very wholesome, heartfelt film like Bolt, or it could have gone somewhere extremely crazy like another movie similar to this, Bingo, or even something like Fluke. This movie doesn't do either one of those things because, man, it's so in the middle, and yet there's nothing of value to it whatsoever. This is a bland, boring, generic kids film. I mean, right down to the bad jokes, the gross-out humor, the waste of some good talent, Josh Hutcherson and Bruce Greenwood, but there's just nothing of value here. It says a lot when this director, who also has done movies like The Wizard and Krippendorf's Tribe, this is his worst. This is his worst film, and yet this is the least crazy of the two of the movies he had done beforehand. And I mean, The Wizard was the movie where, of course, it was nothing but a commercial for Nintendo, and Krippendorf's Tribe had so many moments where you do the Charles Nelson Riley, like things that were just like, how did we get away with this in '98? And yet, this is the movie that is the worst of the bunch, and this is the most sane, the most tepid, the most slow paced, the most easily accessible movie that he could have made, and this is the worst thing he's ever done as a director. But hey, he's done some great TV work, so I guess there's that. Maybe he should just stick to that. But there's not much more to say about this movie. This is a pretty bland, garbage movie that has nothing of value to it whatsoever. It plays it way too safe. It's boring. It's lifeless. It just has nothing of value to it whatsoever. There's a possibility for something good here, but it's just not there. And there's so many better movies with a similar storyline like this that's done so much better. It's much more clever. And even when it's stupid, like something like Rover Dangerfield, it's at least fun and stupid. This is nothing like that. This is just a bad movie. Just a bad rip-off of Doc Hollywood and Cars. And just avoid it like the plague. So with that said, let us go ahead and move on to our last movie, Richard Gere in The Hoax. So the story of The Hoax is that this is based on the book of the same name by Clifford Irving, and it recounts Irving, played by Richard Gere here, and his elaborate hoax of publishing an autobiography, I cannot talk today, an autobiography of Howard Hughes that he purposely helped write, without ever having to talk to Hughes. And, it's definitely a movie that is definitely much different from the book, but then again, most movie adaptations based off books are very different from the original books. I mean, Forrest Gump is one of the best examples of that. The movie is great, but the book sucks. And Irving himself was actually displeased with the project and actually wanted his name removed from the credits. But the movie's pretty good. I mean, I remember liking it. It has a really good cast, with including Richard Gere giving a really good performance. You got Alfred Molina, Marcia Gay Harden, Hope Davis, Julie Delpy, Stanley Tucci. A lot of really good talent in here. A fun concept overall that has a lot of intriguing ideas and some really good moments in general that really show that, hey, Richard Gere still got it as an actor as a whole. But is it one of the best movies of the year? I'm not going to go that far, but it's definitely a movie that I think deserves a little bit more of an appreciation to it. And I thought it was actually really good. I think it's a very underrated film. Features a lot of really good talent. Directed by Lasse Hallström, who usually does not make a lot of bad movies in general. And even when he does, you can tell his intentions were in the right place. But this is a movie that clearly works overall because of how good the performances are, how good the concept is, how good the story is. A lot of it just works overall. And I think it's a very good film, very underrated film, and one you should definitely check out. Definitely check out The Hoax. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. And the next time we meet, we'll take a look at 6 movies on this Friday, April the 13th. None of them have Jason Voorhees, unfortunately. But we do have Shia LaBeouf in a movie that kind of broke him out into the actor that he'll eventually become for a couple of years there. DJ Caruso's Disturbia. Bruce Willis once again showing up in a movie in April. He was in Grindhouse, but also with Halle Berry in James Foley's Perfect Stranger. Carl Urban in maybe his most significant role ever, Pathfinder. We also have Redline, which I feel like was a movie only existed because of one thing that we'll talk about. Aqua Teen Hunger Force, movie film for theaters, a movie that I was one of the few that got to see this in the theater. And we also have Molly Shannon in Year of the Dog, directed by Mike White, who of course is the man behind School of Rock, and also The White Lotus. So we'll take a look at those 6 movies. That'll be coming up on tomorrow's show. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the place on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and that bell, because when you hit that bell, you get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post here every day. Now, with all that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.